Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the forum. My name is Tammy Leslie. I am the president of the Ladysmith Chamber of Commerce, and we are your hosts tonight. Before we begin, I would like to recognize that this forum is taking place on the traditional territory of the Staminas people. A few thank yous to some of our helpers and volunteers before we begin. First, I'd like to thank the wonderful town of Ladysmith for the use of the world-famous Aggie Hall for our event tonight. I'd like to thank Sarah White and Island Pegasus for our sound system. I would like to thank Dean Richards of Ladysmith.com for a video recording, which you'll be able to see on Facebook and other places tomorrow. And at this time, I would like to thank the candidates for coming and joining us tonight, and all you general residents for showing an interest in our political process. And I would like to introduce to you Jenna Forster, who will be our moderator tonight. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me all right? In the back? Yeah. Okay, if I start to sound like Darth Vader, just throw things at me. I'll change it. Welcome. Welcome to the Federal All Candidates Forum. I'm going to go over a few rules and conduct around this evening so that everybody in the room is clear how tonight is going to be moving along. The purpose of the All Candidates Forum is for audience members to gather information they need to make an informed decision on election day. What that means is it's not about audience members promoting a party, it's about audience members gathering information. We do ask if you have any signage with you that you keep it at the back tables until the night is over. It is not for any jeering or inappropriate cheering for the evening. Keeps it moving along so that everybody can hear what's being said and everybody can enjoy the evening. A reasonable decorum will be expected by the guests and the candidates. This will ensure the fair and equitable discussion. The moderator, that's me, will ensure and maintain a productive and respectful environment. If anyone acts out of line or fails to maintain a reasonable decorum, they will be asked to leave the event immediately. The evening will be paused until the situation is resolved. We do take the security of all of you and our candidates very seriously. We will begin this evening. I'm going to introduce the candidates with their party, and then we will be moving into the opening statements, and this has been pre-selected as to the order. So, shall we begin? We'll start here. Bob Chamberlain, NDP. Do you want to stand? Michelle Portfield, Liberal Party. Jennifer Clark, People's Party of Canada. John Hurst, Conservative Party. Paul Manley, Green Party. Brian Marlatt, Progressive Canadian Party. Jeff Stoneman, Independent. James Chumsa, Communist Party. Okay, we will begin the opening remarks. Each candidate has 2 minutes for their opening remarks, and we will begin with Bob Chamberlain. Yeah, just stand right there, great.
Good evening, everyone. I too want to acknowledge that we're on the unceded territory of Staminas First Nation. Grateful that we're here tonight. I want to thank the Ladysmith Chamber of Commerce for putting this event together. We are at a critical time. The election that we are now coming up to, October 21st, is a very important one for a variety of reasons. We are now experiencing untold elevation of temperature across this planet. We need a very clear and concise, reasonable plan to address climate change. We need to make the transition from fossil fuels, and we need to have the strength to carry forward a plan which will actually be implemented, and the NDP has that plan. When I think about the upcoming election, I want you to know a little bit about myself. Growing up in Nanaimo, it's my hometown. I've served as an elected chief for a First Nation in North Vancouver Island for 14 years. And for 9 of those years, I served as the Union of BC Indian Chiefs Vice President. And so I've been engaged with the federal government, both Conservative and Liberals, for quite some time, as well as the provincial government. I'm very familiar with the different issues that are facing this country. I have a very broad and deep set of skills and experience to advance the needs of this riding. And I can honestly tell you, I have engaged with the federal government so many times, I can't even put a number to it. And each time it's been about finding the solutions that we need for the issues that are at hand. I've been at the forefront of environmental movement across this province. I've implemented or been a part of a team that implemented the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People for the first time in Canadian history. And it's about the removal of fish farms and protection of wild salmon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Actually, we're in a pre-selected order, so we'll move to Jeff Snowman.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good?
Hello. Thank you all for coming. Thanks. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for allowing me to have the opportunity to speak. My name is Jeff Stoneman. I'm running as an independent candidate for Nanaimo Ladysmith. I chose to run as an independent because, like a lot of you here in this room, I feel that polarizing party policies are creating divisions within our society in a time when we need to be unified. My platform was created by having numerous conversations with hundreds of members of our communities. It was created by listening to people here and not by a party think tank sitting in Ottawa wondering what it is that you want to hear. I believe I am the only one up here who can honestly say that I will always put the priorities of Nanaimo Ladysmith ahead of party obligations. And I believe that Mr. Manley is also going to tell you that he is nonpartisan. I think the Green Party in the past couple of months has said repeatedly that they would force us to go back to another election simply because they don't like the climate policies of either the Conservatives or the Liberals. And I'd like to ask you how going back to the polls for a 4th time in 12 months benefits Nanaimo Ladysmith. What I'm proposing to do is have drastic climate action while at the same time balancing an energy industry. There is a way using Canadian technology to wean ourselves off of the burning of fossil fuels and onto a clean burning fuel. It's there and it's real. I'm also proposing that we use private industry to pay for our addictions and mental health services. The Liberals gave us that tool with their DPA, or Deferred Prosecution Agreement. I think this is something we should use to take the strain off of us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we have Jennifer Clark.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Hi there. I absolutely love Nanaimo Ladysmith. I love Canada. My name is Jennifer Clark and I represent the People's Party of Canada with Maxime Bernier, and I also represent British Columbia as the spokesperson. I was born and raised on Vancouver Island, and my grandfather, he fought in World War II. He enlisted at around 15, 16 years old of age and went over to fight against the German Nazis. He was critically injured, catastrophic injuries. He basically had 16 bullet holes in his body. He was bleeding out, dying underneath the bridge, and the Nazi soldiers were marching above while he was bleeding out. A French Canadian named Sammy rescued my grandfather, and carried him to a barn that had several medics there. On the way, he said, "Sammy, let me go. It's too much pain. You save yourself." And Sammy said, "No, I'm not going to let you go." And he brought him to the barn, and the medics said, "It is so catastrophic, we cannot do anything for him." Sammy then said, basically, that, "Please, I beg you, save my friend." And they did. They brought him to a Belgium hospital. They put a plastic stomach in him. He could have been on disability for the rest of his life, but he chose to work for the Department of National Defense as a draftsman, raised 7 children, and never took $1 of veterans benefits. He's still alive today. He's 95 years old and lives in Cape Breton. I want to tell you today that my family has bled and they're willing to die for our country. That hard work ethic that my grandfather has is in me. I've been a tree planter. I've planted tens of thousands of trees, both my husband and I. We love Canada. We love our environment. We love this nation. I'm working in the fight.
Jennifer.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have Michelle Corfield.
Chuklako, Stenemas, for allowing us to mamuk on your haholti. Good evening. I would like to just say I'm Dr. Michelle Corfield, and I'm here today as the Liberal candidate for Nanaimo Ladysmith. A lifetime resident of Nanaimo, I have chosen to raise my family, work, build businesses, and give back to the community by sitting on local boards and committees that enhance our vibrant community's interests and well-being. I'm committed to the growth and prosperity of the constituents in this riding. In this fall's important election, Nanaimo Ladysmith voters will have a clear choice. We can choose to send an MP to Ottawa that has a seat at the table, with decision makers that is focused on moving forward with a positive plan to invest in the middle class and those working hard to join. Or we can choose to elect an MP that will go back with this divisive politics, enact cuts to vital services that families rely on, or one who only keeps records of how many times they speak during question period. Nanaimo Ladysmith needs to have an active voice in Ottawa. For far too long, we have not had a seat at the table with the government in power that makes decisions, and that has caused this region to not have the influence needed for federal investments. With my education, work experience, and community involvement, I can be that member of parliament that will strongly advocate for this region. I want to be a part of ensuring Choose Forward continues making Canada a better place for all of our seniors, families, and children. Chu Klako.
Thank you, Michelle. We move to Paul Martin.
Good evening. Thank you to the Ladysmith Chamber of Commerce for putting on this event, and thank you all for attending. I'd like to also recognize that we are on the traditional territory of the Staminas First Nation. It was a deep honor for me to be elected on May 6th as your Member of Parliament, and I care about this community, and I have deep roots here. My work has only just begun, because our communities are suffering the impacts of affordable housing, the opioid crisis, and a critical shortage of doctors. The Green Party has a broad platform that looks after people with improvements to our health care, universal pharmacare, guaranteed livable income, and students affordable education. But the number one threat to us, to the future of our children and our grandchildren, is climate change. We need climate action now. We need a bold plan to transform our resource-based economy to a clean energy economy now. The scale of the work that needs to be done means that we're going to need a lot of skilled tradespeople and a highly knowledgeable workforce. This election is critical, and we must act now. It means all hands on deck. It means an end to the hyper-partisanship that we've seen in Parliament. We need to work together for serious climate action, and we need to stop the corporate influence that has stalled that action. The challenge is enormous, but I believe that we have the courage and we will rise to this challenge. I'm asking you to send me to Ottawa to fight for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Brian Marlett.
Thank you. Thanks to the moderator and chamber. Progressive Canadians are progressive conservatives. We look to the Red Tory principles of balanced progressive social policy and fiscal responsibility, nation building and national unity for the betterment of all Canadians rather than to the politics of regions and movements. I look forward to working with members of Parliament across the floor and representing this community. I have a long history of political engagement and other policy contributions. I was an active member of the BC Policy Advisory Committee of the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada from 1998 until the 2003 hostile takeover by the Canadian Alliance. Since joining Tory MPs and former Cabinet Ministers Sinclair Stevens and Hewart Grafty of the new PC Party, I've been a candidate in 4 general elections, the May by-election and PC Democratic Reform critic, contributing briefs to Elections Canada and parliamentary committees, most recently concerning Bill C-76, the Elections Modernization Act, which received royal assent in December 2018. I'm here to put progressive conservative principles back on the ballot on Vancouver Island. Since 2015, my principal concern has been the healthcare needs of my parents, especially my father, following a spinal cord injury, which caused him to spend 8 months and 4 days in the Nanaimo General Hospital. He came home from ICU disability, by the way, and is now at 89. His last birthday was last week. Outside of politics, I've been an innovator and business leader, including building our family business in healthcare and security technology. My academic career continues to inform my research and writing on healthcare issues, for example, and presentations to a conference on disabilities issues and a UN's conference on natural disaster mitigation, which I believe is the best approach to climate change. Progressive Canadians are progressive conservatives. Principle matters, integrity matters, Constitution matters. The people of this community matter. The issues that concern us include democratic and parliamentary reform and national unity, health care, and the way we address climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. John Hurst.
Hello, good evening. I would also like to recognize we're on the traditional territory of the Staninas First Nation. And I'd like to thank the Ladysmith Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. And I'm excited to be here talking about our community on the Mid-Island and how to improve in this beautiful place in which we all live. But I think we can all agree we face several issues: affordability, addictions and crime, healthcare, and the environment. These issues are crises now because of past MPs being all talk. We don't need an MP who just gets up to talk in the House of Commons, no matter how many times that is. We need one who's going to deliver value and results to our community. I can be that MP, and we have a plan to help you get ahead. We're going to make life more affordable for Canadians with the universal tax cut, tax credits for new parents and seniors, and by supporting small businesses that drive the economy on the island. We have a plan to tackle the addictions crisis in our community and are the only party committed to better staffing and equipping the RCMP to deal with the crime we all face. I will advocate for better health care on the Mid-Island. The current level of service for Nanaimo Ladysmith is frankly shameful. And we need a real plan to address climate change. We need to make an impact on the world stage the way we always have, through our technology and our innovation. So this October, please make a difference in our community by voting for me, John Hurst. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We'll move to James Chumsa.
Hello, I'm James Chumsa. I'm running for the Communist Party of Canada. I can proudly say that the Communist Party is the only party running that is openly critical of capitalism, and it's the only party that's offering a socialist alternative. The Communist Party of Canada also has strong stances on many issues that other parties are afraid to have strong stances on, such as our support for the Palestinian people against Israeli apartheid, and for boycotts, divestments, and sanctions against Israel. The Communist Party is also a party for peace and disarmament, as we're campaigning to pull Canada out of NATO. signed the treaty to abolish nuclear weapons and to reduce Canada's military budget by 75%. We propose to reinvest that money into free and expanded public transit, as well as free post-secondary education and expanded Medicare. We also recognize that climate change is caused by capitalism, and what needs to be done is we need to end government subsidies to fossil fuel corporations and reinvest that money into clean energy, such as wind, solar, or geothermal. We also believe in a climate plan that respects the sovereignty of Indigenous people, as well as benefiting working class Canadians and people residing in Canada. So we propose to reinvest that money into job training in sustainable energy. The Communist Party of Canada is also a party that is actively anti-fascist, anti-racist, anti-homophobic, and against all forms of bigotry. Thank you.
Thank you, James. We'll now move into the pre-selected question period of the evening. Each candidate has received 2 predetermined questions, so they've had time to consider the questions before this evening. Again, this has been selected at random order. That's already been selected. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. We'll go one at a time in your order, and candidates, you can use your rebuttal cards during this period. First question. If elected, what will be the economic priorities for your government to help small to medium-sized businesses grow sustainably across BC? And we will begin with Jeff Stoneman.
All right. Well, we all know that our current reliance on oil and gas, especially in northern BC, is not sustainable. We know that the end is coming for our oil and gas industry, as well as our natural gas industry. It's a fact. We have to face it. If we balance aggressive climate action while shifting to a hydrogen-based economy, we can become a global leader in clean energy. The Canadian technology is there. If we can continue to fuel an energy sector that powers our economic drive, the rest of Canada can flourish. Consumer behavior will dictate that private industry start to shift as we move further and further away from fossil fuels. The only way to continue a strong economy is to start shifting away from oil and gas. Small and medium-sized businesses are going to flourish if our economy flourishes. If we simply start abolishing an energy industry without finding a replacement for it, no business, whether it be small, large, or medium-sized, is going to succeed. It's the only way we can go. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jennifer Clark.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Clark, and as your Member of Parliament, I will be opening up the free market, reducing interprovincial trade barriers so that the markets and the demand in the markets will dictate itself. We're not going to pick winners and losers. We will abolish all corporate welfare. There will be zero corporate welfare. No SNC-Lavalin scandals, and we're going to be reducing taxes for the small and medium businesses to a flat 10% tax. This is going to help free up the markets here in BC. We're going to phase out supply management over the next several years, so you'll see the cost of your eggs come down, bread, milk, your food is going to come down as well. So we're going to be able to help all the homeless people be able to afford food, people that are struggling, young families, single mothers, be able to afford the cost of living. We're going to bring the cost of living down by reducing taxes and allowing businesses to flourish here in BC. We've heard of things like our BC wine can't even go across the border to Alberta without being taxed. We're going to get rid of that interprovincial trade barrier that's happening there and open up the markets. We're going to make sure that all the businesses are released to be able to flourish and innovate and thrive and have competition. And this is what Canada has been built on. We don't want to put heavy burdens
Thank you,
on
Jennifer.
Canadians. Thank you.
Same question posed to Brian Marlatt.
Thank you. It's necessary to work for all Canadians rather than one province or sector of society and business. 97% of Canadian business is small business, less than 2% medium-sized business, only 0.6% is big business. We're a country of small business entrepreneurs and the people who work with them. A sustainable economy across BC and Canada means a balance of continuity and change, and that is what it means to be progressive, not abstract principles and movement priorities. People matter. Applied to BC, this means investing in education, in new and established economies, including trades. It means investing in new economies and infrastructure, including oil and gas, and fishing, forestry, and developing alternatives. Until and unless new economies are firmly established, calling for bans first is inviting disaster. Transportation infrastructure investment, particularly on the island, is critical. Trade agreements that support these priorities and trade strength and negotiation, like Commonwealth Free Trade, when dealing with the US and China, is just smart. The role of government in the economy is to build opportunity, and that requires activist government. Identifying present need and future opportunity, building infrastructure, investment in human resources, building trade relationships, understanding that you're picking winners and losers by acting and also by not acting, builds opportunity. Less government and lower taxes, or more government and more taxes, less tax incentives, and choosing which industries to invest in and subsidize or not is to pick winners and losers. Public policy choices, the practical outcomes.
Thank you, Brian. Same question posed to Bob Chamberlain.
The NDP has long been an advocate for the reduction of taxes for small and medium business across Canada. We recognize that this is a very major backbone for the economy, and it sustains families in remote communities as well as rural and cities. We are also aware that the tax system right now, when it comes time to transfer your business to your son or daughter, there's unfair tax regimes which then handicap them as they go into taking on the business for themselves. With the global economy becoming bigger and bigger and the world becoming smaller and smaller, we turn our minds to the export of products beyond the borders of Canada. And so we are going to develop a single point access for small and medium business to assist them in regulatory process and compliance. And of course, with the training package that we have envisioned, based upon the 2017 report from the trades union, where we're going to be creating 300,000 jobs, good paying jobs, as we transition away from the fossil fuels into green renewable energy. And the training package that's going to be there will also assist small and medium-sized business to develop their employees and be able to retain them for the benefit of their business. And so as we go forward, we need to make sure that the supports are there necessary, that small businesses can flourish, and that the transfer of them to family and loved ones to continue with the legacy are not hindered unfairly by taxes. Thank you.
Bob. John Hurst.
Thank you. I want to start by saying we recognize the role that small businesses play in Canada, and particularly on Vancouver Island. Small businesses make up 98% of all corporations, and we have over 78,000 of them on Vancouver Island. These businesses drive our economy forward and provide good jobs for our community. Sorry, Bob. Our NDP candidate in the summer was quoted by the Nanaimo Bulletin as saying, "I asked, how many people do you know that own corporations? There's 0 on my list, but everyday Canadians, I know them." Everyday Canadians are small business owners. They're the self-employed tradespeople like plumbers, electricians. They're the contractors, the landscapers. They're the dog groomers, the shop owners. They're our neighbors and our friends. We need to stop treating them as wealthy tax cheats like Justin Trudeau does. We need to stop treating them like the enemy, like the NDP, or ignoring them like the Greens. That's why the Conservative Party has announced policy changes to help small business owners get ahead. We know that for small business owners, their business is their retirement plan. They don't have a pension to rely on. They just have the business they've built. That's why we will repeal the Liberal changes to penalize business owners for saving inside their business by taxing them up to 73%. If you own a small business in Nanaimo Ladysmith, you need to vote for me on October 21st. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Same question posed to Paul Manley.
Well, I've been a small business owner for many, many years, so I understand the needs of small business. Small business, as these other candidates are saying, is the driver, it's the economic driver of our country. And I've been on the Chamber of Commerce for Nanaimo for years, and I've talked to business leaders and business owners in this community, and the number one thing is that there's lots of incentives for small businesses and startups to get companies going. But when companies want to take it to the next level, there's very little government support. And so things like research and development, expanding markets, going to global markets, doing new products and training. This is where small businesses need support. And we've got lots of manufacturing right here on Vancouver Island in this riding. And those companies want to stay here. The incentives are elsewhere. So a lot of companies end up doing a startup in Canada and moving to the United States. And that's a problem. We want companies to stay right here. We also need to invest in education in places like VIU to make sure that we have the trades and the knowledge-based workforce that can fill those biotech jobs, the high-tech jobs, the manufacturing jobs that are available on this island and support those businesses. Thank you.
We have a rebuttal on the floor. John Hurst, you will have 1 minute.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, Paul, you mentioned manufacturing companies here in Nanaimo Ladysmith. And the Green Party recently announced they're going to punish businesses for automation and increasing their productivity. So I wonder how that supports manufacturing in the Mid-Island.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
We'll move to the original question and we go to Michelle Corfield.
Thanks. A re-elected Liberal government will provide more help for entrepreneurs, lower business costs, less red tape, and lower taxes for clean technology businesses. Through our plan, we will create the Entrepreneur Canada account administered by the Business Development Bank of Canada. We will provide up to 2,000 entrepreneurs with as much as $50,000 each to launch their new business. We will be cutting the costs of federal incorporation by 75% to $50 from $200. We will be eliminating all fees from the Business Development Bank of Canada, Export Development Bank of Canada, and the Farm Credit Canada for business advisory services like mentorship and training. We will be eliminating the swipe fee on HST and GST for credit transactions. We will be implementing a voluntary real-time e-payroll system to automate records of employment so no longer have to submit detailed records to Service Canada. We will be giving $250 to every new business looking to expand its online services. Additionally, a re-elected Liberal government will lower taxes for clean tech businesses, the market for clean technology, which uses renewable energy and emits less pollution. It is expected to exceed $2.5 trillion by 2022. This is good for Nanaimo Ladysmith. If I'm elected as your MP, I will ensure this riding takes full advantage of all these opportunities.
Thank you, Michelle. We have a rebuttal on the floor. John Hurst, you have 1 minute.
Sorry, I'm pretty passionate about small businesses. So, Michelle, with all due respect, the Liberal government has done nothing but attack small businesses. I work in financial services. I work with small business owners all the time. Between taxing their passive income inside their corporation, where they save for their retirement and their futures at 73%, between the slap in the face by taxing the dividends they can give to their spouse and cracking down on those rules, and not recognizing the value our spouses bring to our business, the Liberal government has done nothing but hurt small businesses in Canada. Thank you.
We have 2 rebuttals.
Uh-oh.
First rebuttal, Bob Chamberlain. You have 1 minute.
First, I want to thank John for highlighting the NDP's commitment to hardworking Canadians. Because that's the focus of our party. And we arrive at a place today that's challenged for small business and medium-sized business. We know that. The outcome, the situation, the task at hand lies directly at the feet of consecutive Conservative governments and Liberal governments. The decisions they've made to focus on large corporations to the tune of forgiving $6 billion this past year. Those kinds of forgivenesses need to come down to the rural communities and the small businesses. And I, for one, am able to stand here and say to each of you that I believe in the New Deal for People, our election commitments, and given the free voting system of the Green Party, I wonder if Paul Manley actually supports all components of that platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We have a lot of rebuttals on the floor. We're going to start with Michelle Corfield. You have 1 minute.
Thanks. Sorry, John. This Liberal government reduced taxes from 11% to 9%. And as a small business owner of more than 4 companies, I have noticed a difference, saving thousands of dollars a year by that tax cut alone. So Canadians are benefiting from these tax cuts. And small businesses are benefiting. Its businesses will continue to benefit if a Liberal government creates strong incentives that will attract companies to the island in clean technology. So we're going to continue to grow this, and we're not taxing them 73%.
Thank you, Michelle. We have next rebuttal on the floor, Jennifer Clark, 1 minute.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Clark with the People's Party of Canada. We are the only party that's represented here that actually cares about the Canadian citizens. We care about your small business, medium business. There's only a flat 10% tax all across the board with our platform. Then we're going to be lowering personal taxes to 0% under $15,000, and then a graded tax between $15,000 and $100,000 of a flat tax of 15%. And once you make over $100,000, it's 25% on that. We will be bringing in sufficient funds to be able to make sure that our debt is paid down. All of these other parties represented here, whenever they say, we're going to give you this and we're going to give you that, we're going to pay for your health care, we're going to pay for your dental care, and we're going to pay for your, your business, they're taxing you in another way to pay that. That's coming out of your pocket. So don't believe them when they're saying, we're going to give you this and we're going to give you that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. We have another rebuttal on the floor. Okay. Rebuttal, Brian Marlatt.
Thank you. The role of government in the economy is to build opportunity and that requires activist government, I said earlier. The Progressive Canadian Party was founded by progressive conservatives like former Minister of Regional Industrial Expansion Sinclair Stevens and Minister of Science and Technology Hewart Grafty. And MPs as well as policy wonks like me. It's important that we look towards the needs of Canadians rather than the needs of political parties or simply repeat talking points given by the central office. Progressive Canadians won't be forming the next government, but as Progressive Canadian MPs, I will work with a few remaining Progressive Conservatives in the new Conservative Party to give a government formed by that party credibility and to balance progressive social policy with fiscal responsibility. We'll work with a Liberal government to balance fiscal responsibility with progressive social policy and with the opposition. It's necessary to work for all Canadians rather than one province, one sector, or one area of business. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. No more rebuttals? Okay. Let's move on to the second pre-selected question of the evening. This will be answered in a different order, and each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to the question, and you may use your rebuttal cards. Second question. When polled, health is consistently at the top of the list of issues that matter to Canadians. The lack of family doctors is particularly problematic in Ladysmith. What commitments will your party make to improve health outcomes for Canadians and address the current challenges of the healthcare system? And we begin with Paul Manley.
Well, we do have a healthcare crisis and we need more trained doctors. And that is why the Green Party has a plan to eliminate tuition fees, just like the Northern European countries do, so that we can train more doctors, they can get through their 7 years of medical training and not walk out with a debt the size of a mortgage. We also need better facilities in our riding. So the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital, I've already called for a tertiary hospital there, an expansion of the services so that we have cardiac care, we have cancer care, we have better psychiatric services and more dialysis units. Right now, people with cardiac issues, heart attacks, cancer, they have to go to Victoria. Half the population lives north of the Malahat, and we have the largest population of seniors in Canada, that demographic. So we need to take care of that. We also should be investing in the VIU health sciences, because training more people and getting them into facilities, you have good facilities, you attract physicians. Good hospital, you attract physicians. A stressed out building, you lose people. So training people at VIU, making sure that we have nurse practitioners that can step into the roles where doctors can't, alleviates the system. And we also have a plan for universal pharmacare, because everybody should be able to have the medicine that they need when they need it.
Thank you, Paul. Same question posed to Jeff Stoneman.
Thanks. I don't disagree with Paul on some of what he said there, but we have a shortcoming in all medical professions. It's not just doctors and GPs that we're missing. We're short on nurses, we're short on mental health workers. I sat down last weekend with a large group of frontline workers, most of them psychiatric nurses and home care aides, and they all said the same thing. Not only are they overrun in the PEDS department, but we have a giant shortcoming when it comes to pediatric and geriatric mental health services. I think the federal government, instead of carte blanche, free tuition to all, which is a program that I don't think we can afford, we should be focusing that on medical services. At this point in time, we could be looking at paying tuition or at least subsidizing tuition for anyone that wants to get into the medical fields, in all of those fields. If we can encourage young people to get into those careers, they'll stay here, they'll help our economy, and they'll fill the gap that we currently have. I think by investing in people, young people, to get into the careers, by subsidizing their education, that's probably the best path forward, and it's going to make the most sense for a federal government. Free tuition for all isn't going to solve the problem. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Same question posed to Jennifer Clark.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Clark with the People's Party of Canada and spokesman for British Columbia. Health and wellness is a #1 priority for me. I worked in the health and wellness sector for over 20 years before entering the financial sector. My husband is a counselor, a clinical registered counselor, works with mental health and addictions and family and marriage counseling. This is #1 priority to us. We have a long wait list for seeing doctors. We want to make sure that we have enough doctors here in Nanaimo and Ladysmith as well. And we want to make sure that the GST, the $40 billion in GST, is going to be transferred down to the provinces directly into healthcare. We have a strategic plan to make sure that healthcare is going to be truly healthcare and not sick care like we see right now. We want to make sure that everyone is going to be taken care of. I've seen people within my own family and my friends that have not been receiving healthcare. They've been receiving sick care. We want to make sure that we promote doctors and give them incentives to promote health here in Nanaimo and Ladysmith Regional District. We want to make sure that we have incentives for them to come here. Instead of the $40 billion in GST going into the general coffers of the Liberal government right now, going who knows where, overseas to foreign countries, we want to make sure the veterans and seniors are taken care of right here in our home region and district and in all of Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Same question posed to Brian Marlott.
Thank you. In Ladysmith and nationally, healthcare and seniors issues are top of mind. There is a shortage of doctors and nurses, partly as a result of decisions made in the 1990s. It takes, in some areas, 15 years to educate family doctors, nurses, and specialists. Wait times have organizational and delivery challenges, especially for elective surgery and specialist care. First can be addressed province by province, health region by health region, but increasing numbers of doctors and nurses is about medical education and placement. I propose that in exchange for a period of service in remote and underserved areas of Canada at discounted incomes, we, meaning the Government of Canada, will fund the medical education of required numbers of service doctors, nurses, and medical technicians. The military does this. That leaves funding issues. Both Liberals and the New Conservatives reduced the rate of federal funding increases from 6% to 3% per annum. We need funding renewal to keep pace with rates of inflation and the cost of new technology and the new needs of an aging population. Concerns about cost and provincial jurisdictions have frustrated plans for a national pharmacare program. It's been discussed since I attended the Progressive Conservative National Policy Convention in 2000. The Progressive Canadian Party is proposing, I have proposed, that the federal government establish a national purchasing agency as a distribution network for pharmaceuticals supplied to the provincial programs. In this way, economies of scale can be achieved without jurisdictional tensions. And I think also we need to add autism to our needs.
Thank you, Brian. Same question posed to Michelle Corfield.
As I'm in our community talking to voters, the current status of our health system is in grave concern for most. Strong, reliable, and publicly funded universal health care is important to everyone and to our economy. In the past 4 years, the Liberal government has moved forward with new health accords, investing billions more in making sure that home care and mental health services have the funding that can make a difference in people's lives. A re-elected Liberal government will move forward, continuing to collaborate with the BC government for more accessible care, shorter wait times, better health outcomes. We will make sure that every Canadian has access to a family doctor or primary health care team, set clear national standards for access to mental health services, continue to make home care and palliative care more available, and take the critical next steps to implement the national universal pharmacare so Canadians can have the drug coverage they need at an affordable price. My constituent shouldn't have to choose whether they buy food, pay for shelter, or fill their prescriptions. These commitments will be backed up with an additional $6 billion investment nationally over the next 4 years, which will be tied to outcomes and negotiated with the BC government. At no time should we be choosing between food, shelter, and prescriptions. 46% of Canadians do not fill their prescriptions. That is an atrocity in this country. We have and should do better. Choose Forward on October 21st.
Thank you, Michelle. Same question posed to John Hurst. Oh, I'm sorry, we have a rebuttal on the floor. 1 minute. Jennifer Clark.
The Liberal government has been spending billions of dollars on corporate welfare while people are having to choose between drugs, their medications, their food, their housing, these types of things that they're addressing. Giving everything for free is not going to be the answer. The answer is abolishing corporate welfare. The answer is stopping the excess foreign spending and spend that at home. We're going to make sure that we have all the veterans and seniors being provided for first and foremost in Canada. These are the people that have built our nation. They have sweat, they have been bled, sweat, and died for our nation. And we want to make sure that we take care of the most vulnerable in our community by making sure we put Canadians first. Canada comes first, our nation comes first. The Canadian people, from the youngest to the oldest, is our #1 priority. We believe in personal responsibility, individual freedom, fairness, and respect. Thank you. Vote PPC.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, John Hurst.
In the early 90s, we experienced a sharp brain drain of physicians in Canada. We're heading back there for as long as we treat incorporated individuals, like physicians, as tax cheats, the enemy, or simply ignoring them. The other issue we face in the Mid-Island is the level of funding we receive compared to south of the Malahat. When you compare the population of Nanaimo Hospital serves in the Mid-Island to the population south, we're not only bigger, but we're significantly older as well. The programs offered and the funding received have not matched our population growth for at least 15 to 20 years. We lack the level of service we need in Nanaimo Ladysmith. We need a tertiary hospital in all levels of government, and whoever your MP becomes needs to be advocating hard for this. The services offered by a tertiary hospital will save lives. Better cardiac care, better cancer care, better mental health services, including pediatric mental health. It will also offer opportunities for our local university. We have an excellent healthcare nursing program, but a tertiary hospital would allow us to train residents as well. If a physician trains in our community, they're going to stay in our community. Economically, a tertiary hospital means more jobs, more support staff, more offices, more services needed, more equipment, and it also attracts investment. Upgrading our hospital to a tertiary one is key to the future in Nanaimo Ladysmith. Thank you.
Good job. We have a rebuttal on the floor. Brian Marlatt, 1 minute.
Thank you. I've been a part of the disabilities people's international community, both professionally and after my father's spinal cord injury in practice. Introducing our patented disability support technology faced unexpected challenges of competing interests. The same thing applies to both national pharmacare and to a national approach to autism. In 2008, the PC Party became the first to endorse the Medicare for Autism Now campaign. I see the cost and provincial jurisdiction raised as serious objections to a change to our system of pharmacare. I've proposed that a national a national purchasing agency might address our needs for a national pharmacare program. What I'm not seeing from other parties, what I'm not seeing from general discussion, is how we address these questions of jurisdiction and cost. These things can be addressed by amendments to the Canada Health Act, but they also need to be addressed with goodwill. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, same question posed to Bob Chamberlain.
Thank you for the question. It's very clear that we need more doctors, nurses, and healthcare professionals. This is a reality that we all know. We all have family and friends that cannot find a family doctor. We know all too well about the long waiting list for critical procedures. And this is a problem that we must face and we must deal with. And like I mentioned before, this lands squarely in front of the Liberal and Conservative governments and the decisions they've made federally. They have been forming government for decades since the beginning of this country, and this is where we're at as a result of the decisions that they've made. The NDP has a plan to shore this up, to work with the provinces and establish a long-term plan to make sure that we don't arrive or have this situation exacerbated. We have a plan also to have grants rather than loans for people that are going to post-secondary, so we can assist not only in this field, but many other fields as well. Now, I posed a question directly earlier when I mentioned about my support for the New Deal for People, which is online. And there's a reason. Because when I look at Google at CBC, it says outside assessment gives failing grade to the Green Party plan. And it was done by Kevin Page, former parliamentary budget officer. Fiscal credibility assessment, and gives the Green Party a failing grade when it comes to realistic economic assumption, responsible fiscal management, and transparency. So I want to know, is this what we support, Paul?
Thank you, Bob. We have a few rebuttals. The first rebuttal was from Michelle Corfield. Okay, Michelle's willing to allow Paul Manley to go first.
Go ahead.
Well, he asked you a question.
Sure. Okay. So the budget and the platform that was sent to Kevin Page was missing the notes that explained different aspects of the budget and the platform. And that has all been sent back to Kevin Page, and he is re-reviewing it right now. So we're going to see that come up by the weekend or early next week. And Kevin Page said, yes, we are going to run some deficits, but deficits are a tool that we can use. And when we invest in people, when we invest in education, when we invest in healthcare, we get a good return. When we invest in infrastructure, we get a good return. when we do what the Liberals and Conservatives have done time and time again, giving tax breaks to the wealthiest and tax breaks to foreign multinationals, or like the NDP has done, giving huge tax breaks to foreign multinationals to export LNG, then what we end up with is deficits and debt that are meaningless.
Next rebuttal on the floor. Bob Chamberlain.
I hope there's not a catch, Michelle. So Michelle's allowed me to respond with my second rebuttal. Having additional notes does not make the changes in the tables that were presented, submitted, and publicized. The numbers in the Green Party platform just simply didn't add up. Notes are not going to correct the figures that are in tables. Now, I am quite disappointed that one of the candidates here wants to continue to mislead you as voters. The fallacy, the myth, the untruth that the federal NDP provided $6 billion of tax breaks to the LNG is a bold-faced lie. And I'm tired of hearing this. You deserve more from your MPs than being misled and being fed false information. I encourage all of you to do your research on the internet, and you'll see the truth that I'm speaking and the truth that's not being spoken. Thank you.
Bob? Next rebuttal, Michelle Forster.
I keep forgetting, sorry. For those of you that don't know, I served 6 years on the College of Physicians and Surgeons. For 5 of those years, I was the chairperson of the registration committee, which actually signed the licensure to every doctor in this province. I know intimately how doctors are trained, I know where they go and where they come from. We have a problem, not because we're short doctors, we have a problem from distribution. We also need to know that the federal government does not have control over hospitals. That is a federal transfer to provinces. Provinces choose how they spend their money. So neither of you are getting a tertiary hospital. However, and I talked to Terry Lake, former health minister, whom I worked under when I was on the college. What we do have control over? Mental health and home care. And what are we doing? We're funding it. Why are we doing it? Because we need it. 20,000 seniors in this riding alone need those services, and I'm advocating for them every day. Thank you, Ms.
Next rebuttal.
I'm Jennifer Clark with the People's Party of Canada. All of these other political parties are completely the same. They're all going to raise your taxes 100%. That's what they do. That's all they do. Go into debt. We are approaching a $1 trillion debt here in Canada. Do you understand what we're leaving to our children and grandchildren? People's Party of Canada has the only platform that is going to reduce that debt and increase our standard of living. We're going to open up the free markets, even within the healthcare industry. And we're going to make sure that everyone is actually going to be prosperous, successful, healthy, happy, and joyful here in Canada. That is our goal. These guys want to oppress you with heavy taxes, heavy burdens, and everything that they're promising you, free this and free that, is coming out of your own pocket. So never believe them when they're saying you're going to get this and that for free. 100%. The People's Party of Canada believes in personal responsibility, and we believe in fairness and respect and individual freedom.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, all Manley, rebuttal.
So Jagmeet Singh did come out in favor of the BC LNG proposal that gave away $6 billion in tax breaks to 5 foreign multinationals. And then he has waffled on it back and forth since. Michelle, the federal government does have a role to play in funding infrastructure. And so beyond transfers, there is infrastructure funding that can go into building a hospital. The corporations that have benefited from tax cuts from the Liberals and Conservatives for generations now, decade after decade, we only need to look and see, where are the former prime ministers sitting now? Where are the former ministers of government sitting now? They're at those corporate board tables. And we see also, where are the former NDP and the advisors for the NDP sitting? They're sitting on lobbying groups that are promoting LNG.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Thank you, audience. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then comes your chance to ask your questions to the candidates. 2 ways that questions will be asked. There are questions that were written, and they're handed to me, and I will be interspersing and getting through as many as possible throughout the evening. The other way to ask a question is to line up behind the microphone. You will ask questions one at a time. We do ask the questions be succinct and to the point, without a lot of background, and that they be directed one question to one candidate. If you have multiple questions, please move to the end of the line and you can line up for your next question. Okay? Candidates, you may use your rebuttal cards in this portion of the evening. And each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. So again, audience members, we are directing questions for this portion to the candidate you're wanting to answer. We will start with the microphone.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask a question for all candidates?
We'll have to answer, you go one at a time. And if you are looking to ask a question to all candidates, we can write it down and they will receive all written questions
So
to be
my
able to
only
get back
option
to
to
you.
microphone is to direct it to one candidate?
One question, one candidate.
I guess I'll ask my candidate of the Conservative candidate.
Okay. John.
My question is, I'd like you to think about your top 3 priorities. Is reconciliation in your top 3? If so, why? If not, why not?
Thank you very much for your question. I think reconciliation is one of those things, as I learn more, the more time I spend with Michelle and Bob, that touches on all the major issues that we deal with, whether it be healthcare, whether it be employment, economic opportunity, whether it be the environment. You know, Bob brought up the issue earlier about taking leadership for the fish farms, right? So I believe it needs to be a lens we look at all our decision making through. I won't pretend to be the most knowledgeable one up here. I am trying my best to learn and grow. You know, we had a great meeting, was that yesterday morning with Quollum Lake? It's ages ago. That really, I mean, I learned a lot. So thank you both for everything you did there. And I think it really made me realize how much more learning I have to do. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, John. We are going to intersperse written questions in between the verbal questions so we can get everyone's questions answered. So this question is directed to James Chumsa. Your question is, if elected, how would you combat climate change while protecting jobs?
Thank you for the question. First off, the Communist Party is proposing to eliminate all government subsidies to fossil fuel corporations and using those subsidies to invest in clean, renewable energy, such as wind, solar, or geothermal. We also demand free and public transit, free public transit, free and expanded public transit to reduce the amount of cars on the road. Unfortunately, a lot of cities aren't designed for people, they're designed for cars, which is why we need public transit, as well as training for jobs in renewable energy, in the renewable energy sector, such as solar or wind. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, James. Go to the mic.
My question is succinct to Michelle Corfield, and I'd like everyone else to use their cards for like response of one, a yes or no only. Should you be elected, would you and your party work towards changing the Election Act to mandate mandatory voting?
Ooh, that's deep. I actually haven't given it any thought. However, we would love for all Canadians to vote. So how we encourage our people to come out and vote is through education. And I think we have to invest young. I remember I think in about grade 3 that we started to have mock debates and we learned about the parliamentary system. And I think that's gone sideways. Since then, I don't remember my kids coming home telling me they needed information. So I think we have to invest in our children to see how important democracy is, because democracy is how we are able to be Canadians. People fought in wars to keep our country safe, to keep our country free, and to keep it democratic. So we have to enjoy that freedom. We enjoy that freedom, but we forget how we got that freedom. And I think we need to include it in all of our educational systems. We should be teaching it at the university about, like, there should be good courses in that. I didn't see that when I went to university. So I think we have to find educational ways when we have immigrants come in. We need them to be trained in what it means to vote. Some of them have never voted in their lives. So I think we have a multifaceted approach to increase voter turnout, and then I would love to debate mandatory voting, because is it Australia that has mandatory voting? And they seem to do quite well. So we shall see, James.
Thank you, Michelle. We have a rebuttal on the floor. Jeff Stoneman.
I would like to answer that with a strong yes. I've been to Australia. I know a lot of Aussies. It really seems to work there. They have to at least be involved in the process, and for the most part, they take the initiative to educate themselves, so they're not just going and ticking off a box, because there are so many people that run down there, they actually need to know who they're voting for. As someone in the trades industry, I know a lot of guys on site that are in their late 20s, early 30s, even pushing their 40s, that have never voted. And as I've run in this campaign and started to talk to more and more guys and gotten on my soapbox on site, more guys are coming up and saying, you know what? I've been thinking I should probably vote now that I'm 30, I've got a kid, but I don't even know where to start. I forget grade 9 social studies. I don't know what the difference is between provincial and federal politics. Why are you running? What are you running for? And how does it all work? So a mandatory voting system would encourage people from the very young age to get involved and to start the process. Thanks for your question.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, we have a written question. This is to John Hurst. As a town councillor, we are dealing with the questioning of zoning and licensing cannabis shops here in Ladysmith. My question is, if your party forms the government, what, if any, changes will your party make?
We will not roll back the changes for cannabis. We support pardons for cannabis possession. And, as they say, the train has left the station. This is our new reality, and we have no intention of changing that. Thank you for your question, whoever that was.
John?
Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. This question is for Paul Manley. Could you tell us I just want to mention BC tourism is huge for our province, obviously. It brings in a lot of jobs and financial wealth to the province. Can you tell us the downside pollution from the LNG?
All of the LNG exported gas is actually liquefied fracked gas, and it's coming from fracking fields in the northeast of British Columbia. Fracking has been shown to poison water by pumping in chemicals into the groundwater. It poisons the airshed with the release of methane, and methane is a potent greenhouse gas. In the first 10 years, it's 80 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than CO2 is. In over a 100-year period, it's 30 times more potent. So it is a climate killer. And it is released in the process of fracking, which is fracturing shale. And the fracturing of shale causes earthquakes afterwards. And so we are releasing methane all down the line. And there's reports that show that methane leaks just, within cities, like the city of New York, are a huge climate problem as well. So fracking, exporting fracked gas, is worse than burning coal. This is not a climate solution. This is a climate disaster. We cannot frack our way out of the climate emergency. So we are calling for a ban on fracking like other jurisdictions have around the world. France, New York State, other provinces, Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. Fracking is bad.
Thank you, Paul. We have a rebuttal on the floor. Jeff Stoneman.
I don't disagree that fracking is bad, mostly because I think taking clean drinking water and pounding into the ground mixed with chemicals is probably not a good idea when many parts of our southern neighbors are going through droughts. However, Canadian companies and Canadian innovators have created ways to pull hydrogen without releasing any methane into the atmosphere. Hydrogen could currently be injected into our natural gas infrastructure at a rate of 15%, and that would cut our carbon emissions from natural gas by 1/3. That's real. So if you want to make a big difference on your natural gas, we need to consider hydrogen. Because natural gas infrastructure is here, most of us have it in our homes, it powers our buses, it runs our hospitals, it powers our schools. Every building commercially in our riding uses natural gas. To suggest that we're going to abolish it isn't real, but cutting the emissions from it by 1/3 is.
Thank you, Jeff. We have a written question. This is directed to Bob Chamberlain. Where do you stand on veteran affairs, and how do you intend to support, replenish, and look after our veterans ongoing?
Whoever wrote that, thank you for the question. Veteran affairs is something that's very dear to my heart. I have younger sisters, they're twins. They're both career girls in the armed forces. I believe that they're the first First Nation women twins in the forces, and I've listened to my sister Deb talk about some of the challenges that she's faced in terms of accessing services once they leave. And of course, I'm not sure if you all know, but when First Nations people came back from World War I and World War II, they were not given land grants like other people were that served. They were given certificates of possession for reserve land, which is held by the Crown. So what we have is a long history of veterans not getting the proper services that they are due for defending our country, for allowing us to have the freedoms that we have today. I believe that every service member that's retired or active, especially ones that are now coming through with post-traumatic stress disorder, that they need the help that is due to them for the courage that they've shown for our country. And I think that the service people here in Canada have been done a great disservice historically, and I think that it's something that I would definitely be advocating for, to ensure that there is proper and just services and retirement for all the people that serve this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
My question is for John Hurst. During the Harper government, the Ministry for the Status of Women was eliminated. My question is, in all of the difficulties coming with climate crisis and everything else that we're facing, including economic uncertainty continuing, how does your government intend to protect the women who aren't the big powerhouses, but who are actually caregivers, child caregivers, and people who experience the stresses of life differently than men?
Thank you for your question.
Okay, thank you for your question. The Conservative Party has a history of supporting equal pay for both sexes. We support women's rights, of course, and we also support, as you mentioned, those spouses that stay at home. So I'll reference back to what I said earlier about not penalizing families for having a spouse that stays at home. It was a Conservative government that brought in income splitting, where if you had a spouse that stayed at home, you were able to split your income with them because they have economic value to the family. They contribute to the family. So why should somebody, a single income household, pay more tax than a household with two workers who, as a total, make the same amount as the one income earner? That's not fair and that's not equitable. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, John. We have a written question. This is directed to Michelle Corfield. Childcare. Lots of spaces have been provided. What do you intend to do to help with staffing, childcare needs, qualified staff, and wages are so low? What are you going to do to solve this issue?
Well, I personally can't solve it by myself. However, I do recognize we have a shortage in training our ECE workers here in Nanaimo, right at the Malaspina. With the childcare changes that came with the NDP provincial government, we've recognized a shortage. We also have a disparity in pay. Those people that are looking after our children, your grandchildren, are not paid fairly. They're paid just above minimum wage. They go to school, they get a diploma. So we have to, and I believe it is in our platform to address that disparity. And we also are committed to providing more after school and before school care. So we have to invest in our early childhood educators. So I intend to support that as we go forward, and I've been supporting it all along through my daughter's friends and through all of the other people that I run into, because this is an important part of who we are. Those people allow us to go to work every day. They need to be compensated accordingly.
Thank you, Michelle. Go ahead.
This is for Bob Chamberlain. Could you please outline for us Jagmeet Singh's evaluation on fracking and LNG?
Thank you for your question. The platform from the NDP has been very clear, and I'm quite concerned that it's not being understood, because it's been repeated many, many times, that the NDP will put a stop to all subsidies from the federal government for fossil fuels. Now, you can pick any fossil fuel you want, it still applies. And so this is the path that the NDP has taken. And we're going to, in our platform, in our election commitments, it talks about saving between $3 and $4 billion by doing that one action, which would then be diverted in creating green, renewable, alternative energy. We also have a commitment for the development of $6.5 billion for large-scale transit across Canada. We have a plan for $2.5 million to be put into the retrofit of homes to make them more energy efficient. We have a plan to make sure that all federal vehicles are electric, including Canada Post. But the fact remains, the NDP are going to stop all federal subsidies to fossil fuel industries. And that is what is within the federal NDP's platform and purview. And I encourage all of you to do your research on the internet, wherever it is you find your facts, and show me where there's a federal involvement.
Thank you, Bob. We have a rebuttal on the floor. Jeff Stoneman.
Thank you for your question. Bob's statement is a little bit misleading, as are some of the statements made in the Greens platform when it comes to this issue. Most of the subsidies that are given to oil and gas companies are for exploration, for drilling new wells, for moving forward, for creating growth within the oil and gas industry. If we put an end, as both their platforms say they will, to expanding the oil and gas industry, we nullify those incentives. If we end exploration and further growth in the oil and gas industry, there are no subsidies to claw back. Those subsidies are only there for exploration and for future growth. So if we're not growing an industry, those subsidies don't actually exist. This isn't a golden egg that we have access to. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We have a written question directed to Paul Manley. 9 senior advocacy groups ask, how will your party ensure that quality, safe, and adequately funded home, community, and long-term care options are available to meet the needs of our aging population?
Well, thank you for that question. Thank you for that question. We need a national senior strategy to deal with the issues that seniors are facing. And part of that is making sure that seniors can age in place. And one of the things that is in our platform is a guaranteed livable income. And that would mean that everybody has a base level of income to live on. So housing, clothing, food, to make sure that their needs are met. And that would mean that caregivers who currently work for free and save the government millions and millions of dollars would have a base level to survive and more to live a reasonable life at and take care of seniors in place, in their homes. People in our communities are doing that now, and they're foregoing income, they're foregoing other parts of their life so that they can take care of the people that they love. And so a guaranteed livable income will take care of that. A senior strategy will make sure that we have properly funded seniors care homes. I mean, we've just seen an issue with care homes here with the sale of care homes to a Chinese corporation that was turned over to a state-owned corporation, and the care is completely inadequate. And we need to make sure that we have national standards that are met as part of our health care system.
Thank you, Paul. Okay.
This is for Bob.
1 second, I'm sorry, we have a rebuttal. Michelle Corfield.
I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about what we've done. The Liberal government rolled back seniors' eligibility from 67 to 65. They increased the guaranteed income supplement for our seniors. They've increased and built a Minister of Seniors, first time in history in Canada. We have invested in homes, care, and I believe caregivers are getting paid now. There has been that investment and that change. So we have done a lot to invest in our seniors, and we're going to continue to invest in our seniors. Seniors are going to see more money in their pockets. When they reach the age of 75, they're going to get a bump up in their GIS. We are doing all kinds of great things to help our seniors move forward and live in dignity. And it's a part of our platform that I'm absolutely passionate about, because we have 20,000 seniors right here, right now, expected to grow to 40,000. We have 1 gerontologist, and we need more. We need more services all around for our senior citizens.
Thank you, Michelle. We have another good choice for taking a seat. We have another rebuttal on the floor, Bob Chamberlain.
I have spoken to many pensioners in this riding. And every pensioner I've spoken, I have yet to hear one pensioner say that everything is going well. I have not heard from a pensioner that their monies are making their ends meet. I've spoken to people at 69 are still working so they can pay for their medications. I've talked to people that are concerned about the cost of rent, where they may become homeless. We need to make sure that the people that built this country in retirement are able to enjoy it as they intended to. We need to make sure that the cost of living is on the way down, so what limited resources will cover more bases. We need to make sure, and one of the things that I've heard from people are people that have stayed home to care for a loved one, to make sure to be out of the workforce, are penalized when it comes time for retirement. And that is, they're living the Canadian values of raising our families and are being penalized at the time of retirement, and that is simply wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. The floor is yours.
Thank you. This is a question for Bob. And as a longtime resident of Gabriola, I share with many of the residents there that they're concerned for the use of our waters for Anchorage And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you are doing now and what you plan to do about these tankers and other boats.
Thank you for the question. I have heard from many people on Gabriola and Ladysmith, the Gulf Islands, about the concern of the coal tankers, freighters, that are anchored out here. There is no DFO permitting. The chains lay waste to very large portions of the ocean bottom, and we start to think about the cumulative impact on the benthic environment when we have a new Fisheries Act that's supposed to be protecting the fisheries and the environment. I have spoken to First Nations locally and all through the bottom of the South Island, and I find that they are very much opposed to the same things that the citizens of Gabriola, of Ladysmith, and so on, and they have mirrored concerns. And so I'm always mindful of where can we build reconciliation that is not the writ large reconciliation, but things that we can do locally where we can bring the two solitudes together to work together and understand that reconciliation is not something to fear. And so with Chris Straw from Gabriola, I've connected him with the First Nations here. Him and I met with Staminas First Nation. I've connected him with the South Island Leadership Council, which covers off the Saanich tribes and all the way up to here. And so what we're doing is unifying the forces to ensure the government knows that there is unity in opposition, that this is an opportunity for reconciliation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We will be moving directly to the floor because we are at the 5-minute mark, and any question that was written will be handed to the candidate, and it is highly recommended that they respond directly. Rob?
This is a dirty question, and I'm directing Michelle, fortunately. I'm looking for a leader, not a follower. Do you, and does your party, consider you as cabinet material? Because we need cabinet officials on the island.
That is a difficult question because then I have to be boastful about myself, which is not in my nature. I come from a very humbling culture that doesn't enable us to talk about our strengths. And so that's why I generally have a difficulty. However, I am cabinet material. Why am I cabinet material? Because I have spent my 25 years negotiating, facilitating, educating, authoring all kinds of legislative opinions. I have just recently finished writing opinions for the 4 pieces of legislation that have come to pass, Bill C-69. All of my work has been uptake, and I just found out, and I remembered that I wrote a dissertation. People often wonder why I went to the United States to go to school. I went there so I could be honest with myself and the people that I was examining. And in Canada, it was very pushed down. I can't think of the word. Oppressed? And so I wrote a dissertation called First Nations Leadership in the BC Treaty Process. This government in this platform is going to make a national treaty commission. That is one of the #1 recommendations out of my dissertation. So I realized that today, actually, and I went, oh my gosh. So am I leadership quality? Yes. Why? Because I can be your environment minister, I can be your seniors minister, I can be your crown relations minister, I can be your indigenous minister.
This is a question that I have difficulty pointing, to anyone, except that I know and understand the PPC's border, but from what I gather, from what the information that I've been able to take from all the parties up there with you, is that how does your party's policies and support for the UN with open borders of undocumented, I will say the word illegal, but they're undocumented, how does your going to, I'm basing this on the example of Europe, in Sweden, 80%, they've had open borders
Please
from
pose
the
the
UN.
question.
So the question is, with 80% increase in Sweden and with Germany and with the UK and no-go zones, and the crime rate has climbed high.
We'll have to ask you to pose a question to a
So the
candidate.
question is, how are you keeping the sovereignty and the protection in small towns like Ladysmith when the borders are open with undocumented people coming through?
And who is that directed to?
Well, who has any policy? It's hard to say because from my understanding. All right, I'll just put it to the PPC because they're the only ones that seem to support my sovereignty.
Okay, great, thank you. Jennifer?
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Clark with the People's Party of Canada. We are the only party that is proposing 150,000 documented, properly vetted refugees and immigrants coming into Canada. The other parties are basically saying that they want open borders. The Green Party is saying 450,000 refugees that the United Nations dictates to come into Canada. The other ones are saying about 1 million in the next 3 years. We are not going to allow this. We're going to withdraw from the United Nations Compact on Migration. We're going to retain and reclaim our sovereignty over Canada rather than giving up our sovereignty to the United Nations. We're going to make sure that our borders are protected instead of allowing people to come over from upstate New York into Canada, causing our refugee list to go down to 7 to 8 years on a wait list. We're going to make sure that Canada's borders are protected and that 50% of the immigrants that come in are economic immigrants, doctors, lawyers, accountants, people that we need, engineers to come into Canada with the designation regarding their education. And so we want to make sure that Canada is prosperous and successful and that true refugees come into Canada. Those that are the most persecuted, the ones that are suffering the most in the world, they're going to be the ones welcome here. And that's what we're going to do as the People's Party of Canada.
Thank you, Jennifer. I have to apologize to the people on the floor. We are out of time for any oral questions, but what I do recommend, if you can write your questions, direct them to the candidate over at the table. We'll make sure that they do get your questions. Okay? My apologies. So at this time of the evening, candidates, we will be moving into the closing remarks. Each candidate gets 2 minutes for their closing remarks. The selection has already been chosen at random. There's no rebuttals for this period. So we will begin closing remarks with Jennifer Clark.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Clark with the People's Party of Canada, and as your representative and as a Member of Parliament in Ottawa, I am going to make sure that Canada is no longer in crisis because we have a national debt that is being racked up to $1 trillion right now. Foreign organizations are influencing our politics with these other parties here. That's why they have so much money. The foreign entities are influencing our political ideologies right here in Canada. We need to stop this. We need to make sure that we don't heap this deficit and debt onto our children and grandchildren that has been piled up by successive governments, the libs and the cons, we call them, the liberals and conservatives. This is going back and forth in our federal politics. 1 year we have the liberals, and then the following year or two we've got the conservatives. They're both two sides of the same coin. There's weakness in leadership here. And as politicians here on this table in other political parties pander to whatever people want to hear from special interest groups, from multinational corporations, we're going to stop that. We're going to stop all foreign entities from influencing Canadian politics and what's going on right here in Canada. There's so much going on, such as open borders, that we've been giving prominence to those people rather than 46% of the families here in Canada that are $200 within insolvency. If they didn't have $200, they would go completely broke. We have budgets that promise millions of dollars to subsidize other countries rather than taking care of our own veterans and seniors right here in Canada. We also we've seen in the last 4 years with this Liberal government, integrity destroyed at the highest level of our land, and corruption has become the norm. So with the People's Party of Canada, we'll make sure that we put Canadians first. Vote Jennifer Clark for change. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Closing remarks, Jeff Stoneman.
I'd like to thank you all for sitting through the past couple of hours. There's been a lot of discussion. There's been some positive, some negative, but I think it's been worth being part of the conversation. If you are happy with the status quo, if you are happy with our current political system, if you are of the minority of Canadians polled recently who feel that the system isn't broken and that your politicians represent you, there are a number of qualified people that are sitting at this table that I suggest you vote for. However, if you are of the 67% of Canadians that don't trust politicians and don't trust political parties, you should think about considering an independent when you cast your ballot on the 21st of October. I'm proposing we take aggressive climate action and balance it with an actual energy industry to fuel our economy, that we secure funding for our mental health and addictions programs through private industry so that the tax burden is taken off our shoulders. There are ideas that we can use to fight the rising cost of living and housing in the Nanaimo Ladysmith riding. We need to address the fact that 24% of our school children live below the poverty line. We need to look at the fact that there are still people in our country that can't drink the water that comes out of their taps, even though Mr. Trudeau promised that that would be taken care of 4 years ago. If these things don't bother you, please vote for the parties, vote for the status quo. But if these things bug you and you want to see something done about it, the only way we are going to change the political face of Canada is if we change how we vote. If we change how we vote, we can change the system from within. It starts here. It starts on the 21st of October. And I strongly urge you to read my platform at votestoneman.ca to see what we can do together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Closing remarks, Michelle Corfield.
So first I want to thank the Ladysmith Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event tonight. Nanaimo and Ladysmith needs an active voice in Ottawa with a government in power that can advocate for the residents right here in this riding. As a citizen, I have worked hard for this region. I'm an experienced negotiator, facilitator with both federal, provincial, and municipal governments. My work included securing $46.2 million from the federal government for the Port of Nanaimo expansion. It's a $100 million expansion that I worked on actually over the last 4 months. I raised over $400,000 for the Steve Smith Bike Park. I've helped disadvantaged youth in our community to receive new bikes and helmets, and addressing environmental concerns with the conclusion of the Colliery Dam. If I'm elected MP for this region, I will have a seat at the table with decision makers and able to advocate strongly for our issues. We need a strong, competent voice in Ottawa that ensures Nanaimo Ladysmith receives its share of investments for our environmental issues, affordable housing, strong and reliable healthcare, to attract clean technology business and sustainable economic opportunities. Nanaimo Ladysmith, voters have a question to answer. Do you want an MP that can make things happen for the region in Ottawa? And I could be fisheries minister, I could be women's minister, and there's a few more I could be. I choose forward and build on the progress that we've made over the last 4 years. I will be the advocate and strong voice for Nanaimo Ladysmith on October 21st. Vote Michelle Corfield.
Thank you, Michelle. Closing remarks, Paul Manley.
Thank you again to the hosts and for all of you for coming out tonight. When I won the by-election in May, it brought positive news about Nanaimo Ladysmith. The day after I was elected, Justin Trudeau was talking about how people in Canada must be preoccupied with climate change. Within 2 weeks, the NDP and the Liberals brought forward climate emergency motions. Even the Conservatives were admitting that climate change was human-caused and we were in a crisis. The voters of Nanaimo Ladysmith did that. So I turned up the heat in Ottawa, and I hit the ground running. I didn't just get up and speak in Parliament. I worked across party lines, and I went and met with parliamentary secretaries and ministers on the issues that are important to the people of Nanaimo Ladysmith. Whether that's affordable housing, or the freighter issue. People were talking about the DND lands, and I brought that forward. I was responsive. I also brought a new level of accountability and accessibility that no other MP has done here before. I held 10 community meetings where people could get up and ask me questions and bring the issues that are important to them forward. Elizabeth May has been doing that for 8 years, twice a year in each community that she represents. Accountable and accessible, hardworking, that is what I bring to the table. Working across party lines, eliminating the hyper-partisanship that we have in our parliament, because we have crises that we need to deal with, and we need to deal with it in a professional and mature manner. That is what I bring to Parliament for you, to represent you. On October 21st, send me back to Ottawa, and I promise you that I will represent you as hard as I can. Thank you.
Closing remarks, John Hurst.
Thank you. I suppose, Paul, we have you to thank for all the party platforms coming out as well. I just wanted to say thank you again to the Ladysmith Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event, and to all the volunteers who made it happen. We face a crossroads as a community. Do we elect an ineffectual MP who, no matter how hard they work, can't deliver us the resources and funding we need to tackle our issues? Or do we choose it's time to get ahead, to focus on all the issues we face in the community? To improve affordability for everyone by keeping more money in your pockets. By tackling our addictions and mental health crisis head on. By reducing crime with more RCMP who are better equipped to do their jobs safely. By making sentencing more meaningful so that traffickers and gangs in our community don't receive slaps on the wrist. By advocating for the health services and funding we need now. By making real, meaningful impact on the fight against climate change. By taking our world-leading technologies and using them to reduce emissions wherever we can, not just in our own backyard. To force large industrial emitters who have been exempted from the carbon tax to pay into a green investment fund to reduce emissions, so that we know the money is being used to fight climate change and not just going into general tax revenue as we see with the carbon tax in BC. If you want to see real results on these issues that affect our everyday lives, vote for me, John Hurst, on October 21st. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Closing remarks, Bob Chamberlain.
First, I want to thank the Ladysmith Chamber of Commerce and our MC for doing such a great job. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I'm very happy to see so many Canadians seeking out the information to guide you when you make your choice on October 21st. I want to leave you with a thought and an impression of the truth. I have the experience to take on Ottawa. I have been at the forefront with First Nations, which is a very large topic, a very diverse envelope of challenges with both Conservatives and Liberal governments, and I have been there. I've presented to various things. I'm not going to try and aggrandize them, but I spoke in front of House standing committees, Senate standing committees, environmental assessments around the province. But I was doing that with many others. I'm not trying to stand here and tell you that I changed the world simply because I walked into a room, because I didn't. I worked hard and I walked into that room many, many times, very direct, very honest, and solution-oriented. We need someone from this riding that can represent in the strongest possible, most direct way. One that has a platform, which is the commitments to each and every one of you. And I stand here when others won't say it, but I support the New Deal for people. You can look at that document and you know what it is that I'm going to be advancing for this riding. Others don't want to state whether they support their platform or not. Doesn't that make you wonder? Makes me wonder. But I know I have a passion for First Nations reconciliation. It's human rights. It's a path to new definitions of sustainability to the environment, which Canada desperately needs now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Closing remarks, Brian Marlock.
Thank you. Can you hear me at this time? First of all, I'm also cabinet material. I've worked with prime ministers, changed legislation, had it amended. I want to see things happen and get done rather than simply talk about them. But I see movement politics and ideological parties as the cancer in the body politic, narrow and intolerant of other points of view, from the conservative movement to the social democratic movement to the green movement. They're not getting things done. As a progressive Canadian candidate, I want to continue to play a positive role in our national conversation and politics, serving all Canadians, including you. When this election was called, PC Party leader, former MP Joe Higlin, said many expect the election to be a Donnybrook. Media reports and polls suggest voters are unhappy about the choices available to them, and that party standing in the last parliament doesn't matter. The hyper-partisanship of the Harper years continued in the last parliament, despite the promise of sunny ways. Candidates from parties in the last parliament could offer voters the same negative policies and spin-crafted talking points heard in the House of Commons, and that's what we're hearing. PC Party candidates, listen. We want to address positively, rarely discussed issues important to you, to all Canadians where we live, to address issues and national conversations in a positive way, and to do so with goodwill and a sense of decency for which Canada and Canadians are justly proud. Issues and from the perspective of nation building and other candidates have forgotten is the purpose of Parliament, even when the issue is familiar. Some of the things we have discussed need to be discussed further. Important to me, at least, are the assurance of funding and a review of means of delivery of our universal healthcare system equally in all parts of Canada, including the means to deliver national pharmacare and autism help, not just to talk about them. We need to talk about mitigation of risk as a core policy of climate change and the protection of the environment.
Brian.
Thank you.
Closing remarks, James Chumsett.
Well, the Communist Party is a party that stands strongly against racism, national chauvinism, or Islamophobia. We also stand strongly against hate speech, which would include blaming refugees on our problems. I would like to remind the people here that Canada is a colonial settler state. It was founded on the theft of Indigenous land. We're also an imperialist state. We're a member of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which we have seen destabilize many countries in the Middle East, as well as a few countries in Latin America, causing the refugee crisis. We also see a lot of people losing their jobs and losing their jobs due to the policies of NAFTA, forcing them to cross borders to find work. Which is why the Communist Party is against NAFTA. We're for scrapping the NAFTA deal, which is now called the USMCA, as well as getting Canada out of NATO. NATO also, or the military, this isn't talked about enough, the military is a huge contributor to the emission of greenhouse gases, as the military is a huge consumer of fossil fuels. NAFTA also helps contribute to the amount of fossil fuels being emitted into the atmosphere due to the transport of goods between long distances. So the Communist Party is the only party that's critical of capitalism, that's for a socialist alternative. We see climate crisis as a symptom of capitalism, and we need to deal with that by addressing the issues of capitalism. If we're to seriously deal with those issues, we need to find an alternative to capitalism.
Okay, well that concludes this evening. I would like to thank the Ladysmith Chronicle, who is our media sponsor. And this entire event has been filmed by Dean Richards. He is of MyLadysmith.com. You can go on to MyLadysmith.com to rewatch it if you'd like to. Thank you, audience, for making my job easier. Have a good night. If you don't mind helping to stack chairs, it makes our work a lot easier. Thanks again. Thank you, candidates.